Everybody, my name is Quentin Iman. I'm the director of a lot of enrollment programs and Salesforce administrator at Santa Fe College, a small college in Florida. I'm just here to introduce the star of the show today, Jay Veerameddy from the University of Arizona. Jay is going to talk about leveraging campaigns to streamline related records creation, which is meaningful to all of us. I will say this before I pitch it over to Jay, and I think you've all figured this out today. Please put questions you want Jay to answer at the end of his presentation in the Q&A section. Don't put it in chat. If you see it in chat, you will get scolded, but I'm not sure it'll get asked. So you can say hello in chat, but please put your questions in Q&A. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jay to start talking about some stuff that's meaningful to all of us. Jay, it's all you. Go for it.
Awesome. Thank you, Quentin. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to the session on leveraging campaigns to streamline related records creation. Let me share my screen. Awesome. Okay, my name is Jay Veerameddy. I am a Salesforce and Marketing Cloud admin here at the University of Arizona. So the agenda for this session is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. I'm going to talk about the challenge we were facing and how we implemented the solution. In the end, I will demo what we implemented. So before we dive into the challenge, I just wanted to give a brief introduction to the data model, especially for this use case. So like many other universities, we also use contact record to store information about students, employees, and staff. On the contact record, you can do some identification. If you look at a particular contact record, you can say whether it's a student or employee based on a couple of fields. But if you want to dive deeper, let's say if you want to know in which program particular student is studying, what is their GPA and all that stuff, then you need to look at the student enrollment object. Similarly, if you want to know some details about an employee, let's say what is their job role, to which department they belong and all that kind of stuff, you need to look at the affiliation object. So if you're someone working at the U of A and you predominantly work with students and employees, you have all the information you need. You can quickly build a report and pull in the list of people you want to work with. So what do I mean by that? Let's take an example of a program manager at U of A. So we use programs for scholarships, for internships, or on-campus employment and all that stuff. So we use programs for that. So program manager usually creates a program, and if any student is interested in that, we usually add that student as a program opportunity, and we start tracking their application. So that's a very brief introduction. But let's say I have this Beckman's program, and this program has a requirement that they need undergrad students in molecular and cellular biology with GPA of 3.0. So this program has that requirement. If I have to go ahead and sorry, I missed that. So if I want to know which students meet that requirement, I can quickly create a report, and this report will say, will say all those requirements. You can see on my screen, currently there are 20 students who are eligible for this Beckman Scholar program. So as a program manager, the challenge for me now is, how do I take all these 20 students who are eligible for this program and add them as program opportunities on this program? So out of the box, Salesforce doesn't provide any native solutions to add these contacts in bulk. So what ends up happening is program manager usually creates one by one manually. Since this is a 20 people, it's not a large number. It is doable. But let's say if a program has 150 or 200 people, this solution is not scalable. So that was the main challenge we were facing. It's not just about program opportunities, but there are other objects where our users were able to filter down to the population they want to work with, but there is no out of the box solution. They can take that contacts and add it to the related records which they want to work with in later. So there was no out of the solution. So for that, we implemented this solution. Before I go into solution, I just wanted to give you a couple of steps why we ended up with this. One is Salesforce does provide data loader and data input wizard, but it also comes with own challenges. Like most of our users are like, end users, they just want to like, create something real quick. Data loader and data import wizard has, huge learning curve. And also you need to export the data from Salesforce and re-import the data into Salesforce, which again comes with own challenges. And all this data is already available in Salesforce, right? Why do we need to export that? So that was the bigger thing. And second thing was we wanted to make this process so very simple so that any user who already has like, experience with Salesforce feel this like, really simple step. So we don't want to make it like the UI to be something totally different. And the last thing, before we started writing code or like, developing LWC, we wanted to see how far we can get with just like clicks, like, flows or like, reports or campaigns. We wanted to see how far we can get before we start writing the code. So that's how we implemented this solution. This is a 5-step solution. The first thing is user creates a campaign and they create a report and filter that report to their requirements. And Salesforce reports has this functionality that is add to campaign that is out of the box. So using that campaign, user adds like the contacts to the campaign as campaign members. And on the campaign, we created a screen flow like as a button. Once user clicks on that button, a screen flow will be launched. The screen flow will have like, the objects that it supports. User can select that object, enter the information, and create those create those records in bulk pretty quick. I know this is like pretty quick. And also I know like most of you want to see like, how this process works. So I'll just dive right into the demo. So before I dive into the demo, I just want to tell you like there are like 3 different use cases for this. So I'll be showing all those 3 use cases. The first use case is like, all the values that user enters in the flow is similar. So the only thing that will be changing is like, contact ID. So it's a very simple use case. Let's dive into that. I have already spoken about this program management, so you will be aware of this already. So the first step would be creating a campaign, which I have already created. So the first step would be creating a campaign. Yep, the first step would be creating a campaign, which I have already created given the time constraint. And the second step would be creating the report, which you have already seen here. The report is already there. So now the third step is like, taking this report and adding these contacts to that campaign. So I'm going to select add campaign. I'm going to select my campaign here and I'm going to click submit. This is going to take a bit, but I have already preloaded the information. So we have all the 20 contacts added to this campaign. Now the fourth step is like clicking on the screen flow. Once I click on that screen flow, it lists all the objects that are supported in this process. For this process, I'm creating program opportunities. So I'm going to select that. Once I click next, I need to select a program cycle. This is a requirement internally. But once I do that, like, I'm presented this screen. And here, whatever information I'm entering here, this is common to all the opportunities that will be created. So let me do that and click create program opportunities. All the program opportunities were created. I can go to this list view and see all the 20 opportunities that are created. So you can assume like, instead of creating one by one, like this process like cut down the repetitiveness and also saves a whole bunch of time. So for this, it's like 20 opportunities, but this also is scalable for like 100 and 1,000 records if there are. So as you can see on my screen, everything remains same. The only thing that's changed is like, contact ID. So that's the use case 1, very simple use case. Now moving on to the use case 2. So what if you need to change like a multiple fields for each contact, right? So how does this solution work? So let's take a look at that. So in this scenario, like, let's assume like I'm an advisor for veterinary science at University of Arizona, and I have this like 9 students that I need to create appointments on monthly basis. So every month I have to create appointment with these 9 students. So if you're creating appointments, like, the appointment start date and time, end date and time changes to each student. So how do we tackle that, right? So again, I have already created campaigns. I think I just left these screens too long, so some of my campaigns were messed up. But anyway, let me go back to the campaign. Okay. Nope, not this one. This one. So I have already created a campaign and I already have a report that is filtered. So the next step would be like adding this to that campaign. So once the contacts are added in the campaign, now again, I'm gonna go and click on create related records. And for this, I want to create appointments. So I'm gonna select that and I'm gonna click next. Here, I'm gonna enter the common information that is used. And in the appointments, we give users like, two different types, like, one is manual entry. So in the manual entry, what happens is once I click on the manual entry, based on the date I entered in the previous screen, like all the 9 contacts gets their own screen here. So if you're wondering what this is the repeater component from ScreenFlow. So this gives me ability to change the date, like the time for each and every appointment. Like let's say this appointment starts at 9 a.m. and ends at like, 10 a.m. This appointment starts at like, probably 10:30 and ends at like, 11. Like, so if you don't have like a predetermined slots and you want like, every appointment to be different for each contact, the manual entry method like, works fine. But let's say you don't really mind about that and you have a predetermined slot, so you can just like, use auto generate. Here I'm going to select the start date and the start time. And I'm going to select the duration of each appointment based on these 2 fields. When I click next, all the fields are pre-populated here. Even though it's pre-populated, if I want to like, just change this, okay, this is my lunch hour. I don't want to do at like, 12 o'clock. I can change it to like, 1 a.m. to 1:45 something. I still have the ability to go and change that, but we are still giving users like, trying to automate as much as we can. At the same time, also giving users like, some wiggle room if they need to. So once that is done, I'm going to click on create appointments. Sorry about that. Let's try one more time. Fingers crossed. Hopefully it works. All right. So all the appointments were created. I can go to the list view and I can quickly see all these appointments were created. So as an advisor, like, I can come back to the same campaign next month and I can repeat this process, like, pretty quickly. So you can see again, like, the amount of time it requires is like, drastically cut down, and user don't have to like, fill in this information manually one by one. So, but there is a big limitation with the use case too, especially like, the repeater component only supports up to 30 records. So if you're planning to work like with more than 30 records, that there is a limitation on that. Hopefully Salesforce increases that limit, or at least they give us editable data table component in future, which again, you can use it for editing records. Instead of displaying them in repeater, you can just like, display them in a data table and edit that. So if you're planning to work with it, or if you're thinking about that, but please keep in mind that there is a limitation up to 30 records. So finally, the use case 3, like let's say I know there are a few universities who like, capture a lot of information on their contacts. And also if you have like a very simple use case where you can just like, get list of users, like, your users just on the list views on contacts, like like the one I created here. On the contact, I created a list view, and I just wanted to know who are the grad assistants. So I can quickly create that list view here. Or if you have like a more data points you capture, and you can just filter them on your list view, you can totally do that. So in this case, what we are trying to do is like, you don't have to create reports. Like, you can remove that reports and you can just work with contact list view. So here, Salesforce again provides out of the box add to campaign on contacts list view. So I can select all this, and I'm going to add this to my campaign. So once that's done, I'm going to repeat the same process again. So I can click on create related records. Now I can select like some other field. And I can click create staff assignments, and they are created pretty quick. So the third one is like mainly like, if it's like, if you don't want to go with the reports or you capture enough information on your contacts itself, like, you can also use this process just by launching this through contact list view. So with that said, yeah, that's it for my demo. Does anyone have questions, comments, or doubts?
Sure, Jay. Let's throw one question at you. What's the next step? I know you mentioned that you're waiting for that editable data table from Salesforce that in a future release. Certainly, that's got to be in the roadmap of improving the system. But where do you take it from there?
Yeah, so I think once the editable data table comes, like that you can use like quite a lot of records for editing. Right now, the limitation is 30. So it's kind of like, very limited, especially if you're editing multiple fields. So yeah, hopefully like they release that. Yeah, hopefully they release
and you're
that.
working in EDA or EdCloud?
I think we're working in EDA.
EDA. Okay. Yeah, that does make sense. Given what you've built so far, I mean, one of the things I know in the community that we all encourage people to do is to try to use basic functionality in Salesforce, and it's awesome that you're leveraging the add campaign members function in that. Did you find any difficulty in making that work with what you customized, or was it an easy answer?
It was pretty easy because this is out of the box solution, so we did not have any issues. And the limits on that is also pretty high. If I'm not wrong, you can add like up to 50K. But again, if you're working with these kind of things, like you have to remember this is a flow. Flow comes with its own limitations. So like most of the records for us, I think like, up to 3,000 to 4,000 records we were able to create in bulk so far.
That's great. That really is terrific. That's really all the questions we've got today. And I want to thank Jay for being here and sharing more about what is an awesome and in a lot of cases out of the box solution. I know you got to build a flow and there's some other things associated with it. And it's great work, again, to be able to leverage something Salesforce already does pretty well and do something more with it. So Jay, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. And we will get you out of here and head to your next session. Enjoy the rest of Higher Ed Dreamin.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.